All right, we'll do the salute to the flag again then.
Yes.
I pledge allegiance
to the
flag
flag of the
United
United
States
States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
roll call.
Ms. Doherty,
Here.
Mr. Hoey.
Yeah.
Mayor Leahy,
Yes.
Ms. Martin.
Here.
Ms. Clark,
Here.
Mr. Dakota,
Yeah.
Mr. Dillon.
Here.
7 present.
Okay. Special order of business. This meeting is being held remotely in accordance to the governor of Massachusetts, March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, 30A, section 20. Okay, so now we'll go right to the public hearing, interdistrict school choice program. Open up the public hearing to anyone in favor. Anyone wishing to speak in favor? In favor? That portion is closed. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? In opposition? In opposition? That part of the public hearing is closed. So take a roll call.
Mr. Dillon,
I'm sorry, what are we voting on?
what are we taking a roll call for, Mayor?
I'm sorry.
I don't know. Do we need a roll call for
No,
that?
it comes up later in the meeting.
Comes up. Okay. All right. Okay. So we just had to have the public hearing and that's it. Okay.
Correct.
All right. All right. So now we need approval of the minutes of the special meeting of the Lowell School Committee on March 27th, 2020.
You can take them all together, John.
Well, and then the committee meeting April 1st and the special meeting April 6th, 2020. So I need a motion to place them on file by Ms. Martin, seconded by Mr. Hoey. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, so now we're into the motions.
Yes.
Okay. All right. First motion of the night by myself, requesting that the administration provide the committee with an update on internet services, the status of the Chromebook distribution, and potential purchase of additional electronic devices. Seconded by,
Second.
sure,
Andy.
Mr. Dakota. So motion speaks for itself. I just looking for an update on how we're doing with the Chromebook distribution. Is there any possibility we need to buy more for this year? And if you could just give us an update on how the internet service is working out. Do people have it? Are they getting it? Things like that. So anyone else wishing to speak or all set? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Second motion by myself. Request superintendent provide the committee with a report showing that the administration is working on a plan B for the budget 21, FY 21 budget. Seconded by
Andy.
Martin. Yeah. So again, this speaks for itself. Just, I got your email, your text message today, Mr. Superintendent. So just want to make sure that we are, looking at the worst scenario and we'll go up from there. Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Next motion by Ms. Martin requesting that the administration report on the rollout and implementation of the district-wide remote learning policy. The report should include the recommended benchmarks and outcome measures that the district will be using to track both short and long-term effectiveness of the existing plan. Seconded by Ms. Doherty.
Thank you.
Martin?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I know that later in our meeting that there is a report that's going to talk, I think, a little bit about the kind of rollout, which I appreciate. I think the key thing that I'm looking for in this report is to really be able to lay out what the metrics are that we're going to be using to determine if this was successful. Things that you value, you count. So we need to, I'm sorry, how many students have been engaged? What's the level of engagement? What's the, kind of not just the outputs, but the outcomes that we can point to at the end of this. And I know that there are many moving targets and all this, but I do think that at the end of this school year, ultimately, we're going to be held accountable by the state for the monies that we've spent, for the commitments we've made to ensure special ed programming and English language learning support. All those things are going to be something that we're going to be held accountable for. And as soon as possible, if we can get that list of metrics of this is how we're going to gauge our success, I think we will be in much better shape, when we come to the end of the year and we need to justify the millions of dollars that have been spent in working to maintain a high quality education product here in the city of Lowell. So that's kind of, again, some of it I know you answer in a later report, and that will be great, later on in the meeting. But that's really my key thing is that, the sooner we can set these criteria for success, the better able we're going to be able to count them, be able to point to them, and be able to say with assurance what was successful in this emergency response. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Next motion by Ms. Doherty, request superintendent provide the committee with a report that examines the factors that may have contributed to tripling the number of student dropouts over the last few years, including staff reductions, discontinued actions, or program changes. Seconded by Ms. Martin. Ms. Doherty?
Thank you, Rona. I think the motion is pretty clear. What I'm looking to do is get a comprehensive picture of what's happened in the last 3 years that our dropout rate has literally tripled. I would be very interested in looking at all those aspects. That's why I listed them specifically in the motion. Actions that we were taking, perhaps, that we're not doing anymore, I haven't done in the last couple of years, staff changes, program changes, all those factors that could have had a role in the very steep increase of our dropout rate. And I think it's important to distinguish at this point that we have not seen that lack of progress in the K-8 grades. And I think we had a pretty comprehensive plan that started very early on, from the moment a child entered the Lowell Public Schools, educating our families how important it was that you come to school, that you attend school. And of course, the relationship between chronic absenteeism and ultimately dropping out or losing any kind of engagement. So I think we have continued to maintain those levels. We've continued to make progress with the K-8. I'm not looking to change that, but I'm looking to really get a better picture of what has changed at the high school level, so that especially at this very important time when we're looking at budgets for next year, we're able to see what are the programs that we need to keep, or we need to put the gas on a little stronger, just those factors. So thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Yes, Mayor.
Sure, Mr. Hoey?
Well, I'm glad this motion's up here tonight because we definitely have to look at that issue. And we've been looking at it. We have civilians like Cliff Krieger that's tried to talk about this with me about more vocational schools. We only have 78 on a list. Well, in my opinion, I've worked up to the point that I think we might have 1,000 kids that Lowell High that just don't even like going to school. You put a paintbrush in their hand, a hammer, whatever, teach them how to do cosmetics. And the thing I have seen, positive stuff, Mayor, is Ms. Desmond's already working with the Greater Lowell Technical High School now to maybe get things online for kids and maybe even get them after school, picking up things, trades. So this whole city's done real well. I wish we had a lot of money. Right now, we don't. Because like the courthouse and these places, some of them places are big enough to maybe be a small little trade school. Something you might want to talk about there before you get your first term. But this motion's good because, yeah, there is a lot of kids dropping out. I think I'm the only one here that's ever dropped out of high school, okay, on the school committee. So this issue touches my heart, and the motion's a good one. Both of her motions tonight. Usually I say the motions of mass destruction, and I say some things that I shouldn't say, but I got a good feeling about what's coming for Lowell. And I want you to know, Mayor, you're doing a pretty good job being open-minded and letting us all talk. I haven't been gavelled by you yet. I thought I was going to be gavelled before, but we have a great team. I'm telling you right now. The superintendent, when he hired people he did, Jim Hall, I don't want to go through the whole list, Miss Desmond, we got 3 people right there, to me, that can run the ship. All 3 of them could run a ship, honestly. All 3 of them can. And I know my colleagues know I'm right. That's how well we're staffed top. And I'm sick of hearing the top's not doing stuff or with top heavy. I don't think we're that top heavy. Our payroll clerks are being worked to the bone. I know I'm going off the track here, and I'm sorry. But I like your motion, Ms. Doherty, and I like the next one even better.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Next motion by Ms. Doherty, request superintendent develop a plan that enables custodial staff to safely clean and maintain school buildings and grounds during the shutdown, including the potential to, that's all I have. Sorry, Ms. Doherty. It got caught off or something. Seconded by Mr. Hoey. Ms. Doherty?
Thank you. So the rest of that motion was about completing projects that often get overlooked due to time constraints. We typically don't have enough time to do all the work we need to be doing in our buildings. So I'm looking to take advantage of the time that we have now that our buildings are empty, but also make sure that our staff are going to be safe. And I think it can be done. You can have one person working on one floor, somebody on the other floor, someone working outside on the grounds. So I really was looking for a plan of how we're going to take advantage of these empty school buildings that we have and make the most out of the maintenance work that we never seem to have enough time to get done during the school year. I would also, Your Honor, throw this out that perhaps the city could be using that time. You know, we constantly have plumbing issues and electrical issues that, you know, the staffing on the city side is just not robust enough to manage all these issues as they come up. As we know, we've had maintenance issues in our buildings for a while. So that might be another opportunity that we could get some of that work done. So that's my intention. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Just one quick comment, Mr. Mayor.
Sure, Mr. Dakota.
Thank you. Maybe we can forward this motion to Mr. Underwood to see what his viewpoint is on that
I,
for our next meeting.
Can I speak on the motion for a minute, please?
Yeah, I'll make a motion by Mr. Dakota, seconded by Ms. Doherty to forward this to Mr. Underwood.
Mayor,
Well, I was fully expecting that Mr. Underwood would be buying into that, you know, would be preparing that report for us.
Yeah, well, he'll see it this way too.
I wanted to speak on that. I wanted to speak on Ms. Doherty's motion before we change the motion, but that's okay. I
Well,
still
all
wanna
we're doing is referring it to Mr. Underwood, so it's the same, but go ahead.
Yeah, it could be. I don't feel that way. I just do feel like this. Number one, I know you can keep the custodial staff safe. Number two, I think we have maybe a little extra money down in that department that they might even be able to get really on top of the landscape and get the leaves around the fences really good this year, because we haven't looked real good on the outside of our ground. And I think that's another thing we could get them doing. I do think Mr. Underwood should be part of this conversation But if you don't think that some of us don't get in touch and ask questions to find out, hey, what can we do to get this rolling? Because I believe custodians are important. I do believe the school committee, we got to go look back. You know how we're looking for subs and you're looking for tutors, which are great things to have. Sometimes we lose custodians, like, for instance, Mr. Bilby, I forget his first name, at the Morey School. He left 40 years in the business. And Mr. Silver from the McAvenue School, 38 in the business. And they had jewels. Their schools were like unbelievable how clean they were. They might be bored because they've been retired for 6 months. We might be able to call them up and say, hey, you want to come help a kid clean this school or show them how to? Because sometimes you got 100 custodians. I love 70 of them. 30 probably need some training. I know the Parks Department, Mayor. You got guys that want to weed whack with Jesus sandals on. The training here hasn't been that great. And I think at the school committee, this is a good time. Maintenance is huge. Get these custodians back to work as soon as possible. They can stay safe. I think Ms. Doherty's right on the money. And I think we don't even need to go to Mr. Underwood. Sorry, Andy. It's just the way I feel tonight. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for the
Thank
time.
you. Mr. Superintendent, can you just tell us what the status is with the custodial staff? What are we doing with them now?
Yeah, thank you. So Dr. Hall supervises our custodial crew as our chief operating officer. Dr. Hall, can you share an update with the committee?
Sure. Initially, they were working every day in order to make sure that we took the time to clean up the outside grounds while also balancing health and safety in the governor's order. Additionally, as well, we believed we may not have enough cleaning supplies to sustain the daily effort. But as the situation got worse, we eventually went into phasing where we had one person in the building at a time on a rotation and stop the night shifts. However, over the last week or so, we're going back to look at a schedule so as how we can address projects that are hard to clean areas. So we are making an effort to try to balance health and safety and get some stuff done. And in addition, we did look into, like Ms. Doherty said, some things the city could do. We're looking at something that was promised to us at the STEM. However, it would have been good to get that done, but now we can't because of all the meals that are being made there. So we did explore things like that, just so you know. But we are having great success at the STEM cafeteria with 40,000 meals last week. So we didn't want to risk that to bring the city in to work on one area that they were going to do over break. But we'll continue to look at that. The custodians have been great in working and cleaning and not objecting too much. And they've been a great help in cleaning the schools. I'd also like to note the custodians put in an extraordinary amount of effort while we were in school when COVID-19 started and doing extra cleaning of the floors, the doorknobs, the handles. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that no one got sick in the week or so that we were in school before the governor and or Dr. Boyd and the governor both canceled school. So I just wanted to put that out that we are appreciative of what they did do, but we certainly will look into bringing them on as much as we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hall. Mr. Mayor, is that sufficient for your response you were looking for?
Yeah, I just am looking for, so I'm willing to wait another couple of weeks, but I think we should kind of assume that we can have them in the building separated and safe. I think we should be doing projects that we haven't been able to get to. I think we should be working with the city to coordinate projects, plumbing projects that have been neglected for a while, electrical issues. So if we do happen to get an order in the next 2 weeks that school will not go back for this year, I think we should jump on a schedule where we take advantage and have plumbing issues, electrical issues, tile issues, and get an early jump on the summer cleaning. That way we'll have more time to spend on the outside of the grounds, taking care of not only the the grass and bushes and stuff, but fixing the parking lots. So, I know we're trying to play it safe, but I think we're missing a good opportunity now. So I'm willing to wait a couple of weeks, but I think we need to coordinate and get people back in. The DPW workers have been out, Parks Department have been out, all of this, and we're trying to keep everybody safe, separate. But I think we're missing an opportunity right now. So that's all I had to say on that.
Mr.
Mr. Dakota?
Yeah, thank you. I think we have to be careful on that. I agree with you, but I think the city is the one, and the DPW has the purview of addressing plumbing and electrical issues. Our custodians are not allowed to do that. So,
No, I know that.
you know, so unless we can get some kind of an agreement or some kind of an agreement between the union and our custodians to be able to, you know, perhaps do the simpler activities of plumbing and electrical, that might be helpful.
Right. No, we're trying to get an agreement that we can do some things, like especially changing tiles. But no, DPW would do their jobs, custodial would do their jobs, and we just should be getting a jump on that summer cleaning.
Sure.
Need one more thing, please.
Sure, Mr. Hoey?
Thank you. It almost relates to Ms. Martin's motion. There's no doubt we could easily be looking at the worst case scenarios, because even later on, we'll be talking about, you know, voting to stop the school year. I still have a lot of hope that May 4th, someone says, you know what, we're going to reopen. And I think it's important to stay that way. Just for the seniors alone, I feel we should stay a little bit that way. I know it's not good. We should be planning for the worst case scenario. But I think by showing people that we want to pay them, we don't want them to leave. I think we've done some great things. That vote for the coach for me shows us we have a heart. But I got a good feeling about this motion, because there's no kids in that school. So if you got to clean walls, or you got to use any type of chemicals that might bother us all now, it could be on bricks, it could be acid, it could be a lot of things. This is the time to do it. This is the time to clean our schools. And I have talked to Underwood a few times, many times, about maintenance. It's a big issue, and we're the ones that created all the problems with maintenance. The school committee should be proud of themselves. You know, what can I say? No more. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else? All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Bye.
Thank you. All right. I found my page I was missing, Mr. Dillon. Next motion by Mr. Dillon. Request. Maybe they didn't like your motions. I was missing the whole page. Request the administration explore closing Lowell Public Schools through the end of the current school year, continuing to operate in a distant learning environment. Mr. Dillon, seconded by
Okay.
Mr. Hoey. Mr. Dillon?
Yeah, so, you know, I'm just like a lot of us, I'm sure, are getting the uncertainty is getting heavy. And I think it would provide us with some relief if we make that decision now. I think making decisions week to week based on what ifs aren't going to get us anywhere through this process. And so I think just making that decision, we can start to do things like we just talked about with the custodial staff, and really coordinate with the city and make plans to improve the school for September. We can also start focusing on the kid.
Did he freeze?
Yeah, I think he did freeze.
Up there you go.
Missed the-
Yeah, we can't hear you, Mike.
I'm back.
Okay.
You know, so I think I started saying that the weight of uncertainty right now, I feel like is holding us back. And the only way that we can be productive through this thing is making a decision. And we're getting real close. We're 2 weeks away, but, you know, just under 3 weeks away from May 4th. there are a lot of factors in Lowell right now that make me not want to send the kids back at all. I think there's going to be a certain part of the population that doesn't want to send their kids back regardless of what the decision making is. And when I hear things like the Stock Closer School and the city, using the Stock Closer School as an emergency shelter, I think they're all banking on it anyway. And I'd have a real difficult time sending our kids back to the Stock Closer School, to be honest. Being used for that reason. And so I just think that what we need to do right now is focus on the kids for the next 2 months, have a plan, and over the next, over the summer and in the course of the next few months, let's make the place better than it was this September. And I think in a lot of ways, we can take advantage of this situation if we move beyond the week-to-week stuff and we can really just set a plan and start working together. Now, I know it's a tough decision, so certainly want input from the mayor and the superintendent, and I'd love to hear what you think about it and what you guys have to say, but I really feel like that could provide us with some relief and move us forward if we made a decision like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Yes. Yes,
Sure, Mr. Hoey.
thank you. If anybody else wants to go first, that's fine too, Mayor. I don't
Go
care.
ahead.
All right, the only problems I have with this motion, and it's not much, I could be lured into this in a minute, but when I hear explore closing the Lowell Public Schools, I really want to leave that out of my mind until May 4th. And the real reason for me is if they say we have to go back to work, all these restaurants and everybody else, I know we don't want to hear these words, but we are a very important place for people to have their children when they have to go to work. And I see now that I'm 65, they're spending upwards of $1,700 or more dollars on daycare. It's at a month. It's more than a mortgage. I mean, I've already witnessed it with someone that was living with us. It not softens, but I'm a grand, I know I'm doing daycare for nothing. My wife does most of that, of course. They don't want their kids with me. What am I going to teach a kid? How to put a shingle on a roof? But let me just, very, very important teachers. So before I even think about closing schools, and I do like the motion about other things like operate, distance learning. I think we have to continue to invest money in that area. And nobody's fault. It's like maintenance. We haven't done enough for technology, not since I've been around, but that's the way it is. But again, let me just say something about your staff. All your staff, I'm proud of them. I'm really proud of them. And I hope I can convey that message to our staff tonight more than ever. Thanks, Mayor. Thank you.
Any further discussion by the committee? I just want to say, sure, go ahead, Ms. Martin. No.
Actually, it was me. I don't know if Ms. Martin wanted to speak.
No,
Go ahead. I can wait.
Okay, I'm just going to be really quick. I'm thinking about that saying, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. I think it's a little early now to make a decision to not reopen. I would want at least a couple of weeks, get more information coming in. It is a big decision either way, but I think we should be preparing, coming up with the plan. How would we continue? But if we could go back in June, I think it would be worth holding off on that decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Quick comment.
Let me just ask Ms. Martin, did you want to speak?
Really, Ms. Doherty said exactly what I'm thinking. I just think it's far too early to be making this decision. And I think we need to ensure that we're in line with the rest of the state. We're not an island. We're all responding to this situation. We have certain flexibility, but ultimately we're part of the education system in the Commonwealth. And I think we're best served if we, remain in line with the governor's orders and, move forward that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dakota?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Pretty much what Ms. Martin just said. I have to put my trust in the governor, who I think has been coming forward with a lot of very well thought out plans for dealing with the COVID-19. So I would prefer to wait and see what he has to say in the next week or two to determine which route we want to go, because I don't want to go against what he has to say for the state. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Dillon?
Yeah, I understand all those concerns and staying in line with the governor, but those decisions happen slow, and we're not everybody else. And I think for a lot of reasons, I think this emergency shelter at the Stockholst is a bigger deal maybe than we're giving it credit for right now. It's going to be a really difficult decision to start sending kids back there if it's used as an emergency shelter. And I just think there's a lot of value in being able to put that behind us, and because I think it's something that's coming anyway, and I think it's really slowing us down. But I thought it was worth looking into, and I really think that we should stay on the path anyway. Like some of you mentioned, having that plan for the worst case that we're closed, because I really do think we can use it to our advantage, get a lot done for September, maybe that we couldn't have. Thank you.
Mayor,
Um,
Mayor, one more.
Mr. Hoey, yeah.
Mike, the motion don't bother me. I can vote for that motion because you have the word explore. Have the administration explore. So it doesn't hurt me to get them to give us a little bit of report of what they think, and continue to listen to our top three here, and 4 and 5. I mean, I'm not trying to throw anything under the bus. But Mayor, we're solid. We're solid here.
Thank you. Sure, my comment, by the time we get an answer for this, we're gonna have our answer from the state. I think it's a good motion to stop preparing in case we do get it, and to be in the forefront of exploring what's happening. So I think it's a good motion, and thank you. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Let me ask one other thing.
Roll call vote on that? But there was some significant dissent.
Sure, you want a roll call?
I think we should.
Sure, okay, roll call.
Mr. Hardy.
Yes.
Mr. Hoey,
Laura, yes.
Mayor Leahy,
Yes.
Ms. Martin,
No.
Ms. Clark,
Yes.
Mr. Dakota,
Yes.
Mr. Dillon.
Yes.
6 yeas, 1 nay, motion's approved.
Okay, thank you. Let me just remind everybody, if you're not speaking, try to mute your screen because there's a lot of noise coming through. To the members, school committee members, the easiest thing for me to see, and I'll call as I see them, if you'd like to speak, maybe put your fingers up by your eyebrow. That way I can see your hand for the acknowledgement. Thank you. Next motion by Mr. Dillon. Request superintendent ask the athletic director to provide a report identifying any recommendations to be considered for athletics during the current budget process. Seconded by Mr. Hoey. Mr. Dillon?
Yep. This, it certainly comes out of some of the conversations we had the other day. And I look at a budget in a year that now I know things have changed, but a year that we're supposed to be comfortable in a budget, and there's not even any talks about money being allocated towards athletics. And I think I see and I know that there is a significant need there. The costs get greater every year, and if you're not increasing, then it's coming from other places. And we're already in a situation where we have coaches are understaffed. They're underpaid probably anyway. And a lot of times they end up splitting their paycheck with an assistant coach who's a volunteer, or, so we're in a position where we could certainly use some attention there. And I just want it to be advocated for, and leading into my next motion a little bit. Am I on now?
Yep, you're on. You're speaking.
That goes right into my next motion. I just think the AD position doesn't allow us for, a good advocate for athletics. So I'd just like to get that out in the open, see what we need, see what we can do, and try to work it, whatever we can into the budget.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, sure, Mr. Hoey.
Phil in the Army again, saluting you there, Mayor. I had the athletic subcommittee, like I said, I didn't have many subcommittees, only one, but I studied a lot about it, and plus I always look for it. But if you look at the budget, and is Miss Desmond here tonight, by the way? Miss Desmond?
Yeah, she's down there somewhere. Yep.
Okay, great. But in the past couple of years, Mike's right. I mean, we cut about 10,000 out of supplies, 8,000 out of transportation. That statistician, Bob Bayham, who keeps all the stats about Lowell High over the years, we had to cut him. We had to cut, I believe it was skiing. And then I have looked at numbers before, and we're going to be talking about something other than budgets in a minute. But I just think we've cut enough out, and it's nobody's fault. I mean, we've had money struggles in the past few years, but it is a great motion again, Mike. I appreciate it. Things in the past that I always fought for, but sometimes it's at the bottom of the barrel when it's coming to what I call you got a priority list. And technology, believe me, was right down there. It's something that we can overlook sometimes, a little bit easier. And I'm glad you got this motion again. I'm going to support it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 All right. Last motion tonight by Mr. Dillon, request the administration provide a report on the position of the athletic director at Lowell High School, including a job description, outline of responsibilities, number of teams and programs, number of staff, and any other relevant information available. Seconded by Mr. Dakota. Sure, Mr. Dillon.
Yeah, and like I just talked about, this is something that I've been looking at for 10 years. I think our athletic director in a program like Lowell needs to be a full-time position. Right now, our athletic director is 0.5 position, which would be 50% of his job is to be the athletic director, 50% is to oversee the physical education part. Also being a phys ed major, I got a lot of issues with that because what it results in is that athletics doesn't get advocated for correctly and phys ed doesn't get advocated for correctly. Am I still on?
Yep, you are.
All right.
You're frozen, but we can hear you.
All right.
Hey.
I think where I do want to go with this is to make our athletic director full time. I think in order to have K through 12 athletics continuity there and really develop our youth programs, I think that needs to happen. In a district.
Your voice just went out, Mike.
Really just like to look at the position, get all the information, put it on the table. I guess a question to defend physical education might be, can anybody recall any professional development done for the PE staff? PE focused professional development. I don't think there's been any. I probably never. So I think both of those departments need better advocates and they need somebody. I think we just need to take a look at the position. So I wanted to get that started. Thank you.
Sure, Mr. Hoey, I don't even have to look.
Okay, but this is dear to my heart also. Where do I want to start? The superintendent. When we first hired this new superintendent, Mike, this 40-year-old Pat there, I sat down with him. He let all of us sit with him, and he asked, what's bothering you? What do you want to fix? And I said to him, Mr. Superintendent, and I hope he gets involved on this motion, but I said, Mr. Superintendent, listen, you got to look at this guy, Pat Sweat. I want you to hear his ideas. along with the AD that we have, which is Dave Lazinski. And he says, let's put their minds together. And this is before you came, Mike. Nothing against this motion. I'm going to support this 100%. But I know how big of a job it is for an AD nowadays. It's, like 33 sports you have, 68 teams, 115 staff members at low high, another 54 at your middle school. And the AD's job is also, this is, I think, his biggest issue. And I just want Ms. Desmond to hear this, and hopefully she's listening. His biggest problem is doing the 9 evaluation on a PE teacher. And I've learned this over the past few years, just talking to ADs, past ADs, new ADs. And of course, we used to have George Bossy for an AD if you wanted to see something beautiful. He was an AD for me. He'd make you wear freshman boys softball pants when you were a girl. Believe me, he was a tight guy with money because they never gave him any money. And Mike's so right. This type of school, 3,200 children, and we wonder why we're having so many dropouts. We're not doing enough of activities for them, music included, Andy, dance, you name it. These kids want things different. And what I did, and I'm sorry I'm still talking, Mayor, but this is it. I had a very good opportunity, and you're making me salute again, to join the U.S. Army when I couldn't make it through Lowell High School. These children don't have that anymore. So Mike, your fight for physical education and what we're going to get accomplished this year, I think, at the budget, I'm feeling good about things, Mike. Nice job with this motion, and I'm going to support it because it's important to do. We need to fix it once and for all. And you have Ms. Desmond. Watch her helping us out with this issue. It's going to become good, Mike. Nice motion.
Thank you, Mr. Clark.
I was just going to say, and I think this relates a bit back to Ms. Doherty's motion earlier about the dropouts. In terms of evaluating, what are some of the proactive measures that we're looking to take in the next academic year and future academic years to really reduce that dropout rate? And this motion, as well as Ms. Doherty's, in understanding what has happened in the past, but now looking to the future, what are some opportunities that we have to reduce that dropout rate? This might very well be a part of it. So I'm interested in learning more here, but also evaluating it on a larger scale to say what are some of the other items that may be missing or in need of attention to help all of our students be successful and feel engaged at the high school level. Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Thank you. Good motion. Subcommittees. Finance Subcommittee. Ms. Martin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So the Finance Subcommittee met last Wednesday, April 8th at 5 p.m. Present from the subcommittee were myself, Mr. Dakota, and Mr. Hoey. We also had from the rest of the school committee, Mayor Leahy, Ms. Clark, Ms. Doherty, and Mr. Dillon, and representing the school department, Dr. Boyd, Ms. Billy Jo Turner, and also Dr. Hall was with us as well, if I'm remembering correctly. I don't know why you didn't make it on the list. You should probably talk to Mary about that. So we did have the committee really was pulled together to do a budget update to get some of these numbers in front of us. Quite honestly, even from week to week, what we discussed last week really doesn't even still feel salient because the situation has changed so much in just a week's time. We did talk about the initial budget process, that we were, looking at when we began this process, about a $12 million increase. I don't think anyone is suffering that that's going to be the case anymore, given the situation that our district is in. Ms. Turner did present to us some balances that are in our current year, our current budget, that won't be spent out in FY20 so that we can reallocate those funds. And I think, we look at, there are some payroll expenses, some transportation substitute line, our out of district line, all have savings in them right now that can be reallocated by the end of the year. We did talk a little bit about what that would, where those monies could be spent. I'd also like to include, because I don't think we necessarily talked about it then, I know that from our current budget process for next year, There are a lot of purchases that have been recommended by our school site councils. I think as many of those purchases that we can make with these funds are going to put us in a much better position for next year. And that is something I know Ms. Turner's on the call, and I don't expect you to answer right now. But as we move forward, I think that should be with the first round of these monies should get spent. I know we've talked about making some investments in curriculum. I support that. All those different things. I know technology is an area, but there I know specific school sites that have made requests for curriculum and technology that we can use these funds to spend out and not have to touch the FY21 funds. We can talk more about that, obviously, as we continue working our way through the budget process. So we did talk a little bit about the kind of path forward for the central administration as they take in what the school site councils have provided us. I think that we all recognize that there was some challenges to that process. I think both prior to COVID and certainly afterward. But I think that we are now finding ourselves in a situation where even the assumptions we made, again, a week ago are just no longer valid. So looking forward, I know the mayor's motion earlier is about looking at a plan B. I think that that's certainly the path that the administration is on. They had presented to us kind of their first pass at that, where they're presenting the budget, kind of what our original thoughts were around it. They're also putting together a status quo budget, which is basically a level service budget. It requires a $6.5 million increase. I think falls in the realm of optimistic. And then, the other kind of things that will have to be considered, looking at some of the voidable contracts, considering hiring freeze, and last, and what we hope is unlikely a reduction in force. But those are all decisions that are going to be made in these next few weeks. The information from the state, while it's very dire, is not very specific. So, and the city as well is certainly in a crisis mode. So I think the finance subcommittee will be continuing to meet, and the administration I know is continuing to work with kind of a shifting sands approach to what FY21 is ultimately going to look like. But I think there is certainly a consensus building that it is going to be an extremely, extremely challenging and difficult year, and that we are going to be called on to make some very difficult decisions. So I'd submit that as a report of progress to all my colleagues who were kind enough to join us. If you'd have anything to add, please feel free.
Yeah, Mayor, I'd like to say something.
Sure, Mr. Hoey.
Love your motion, Mayor, earlier about worrying about the year 21. I don't believe, because I have a lot of faith in that guy in Chelmsford there, Jay Lang. Sat on a show with him not too long ago, and he was talking about the City Life show, by the way, the one you go on. He was talking about this year should be pretty good, but we're all going to have some big issues in 21. So your motion's right on top of things. But I just think Ms. Turner and Jim Hall, and we got good people watching us, and the superintendent has his hands full. We all know it. I think he needs to talk a little bit probably about how bad we are and what he thinks is happening, so we all get a sense of what are we going to have to look to do. Is it going to be now? Is it going to be 21? I think this year we're pretty safe, to be honest with you. And I want to end with this. I know I tried to call Ed Kennedy today, our senator, just to get another vibe of how he felt. And I didn't get a hold of him today. And that's okay, because he usually answers my phone. But I feel real good about the Senate, the way they voted to bring up this new Student Opportunity Act. And I think when they get their priority, even if things are bad, I don't think they can turn too much on schools. We're noted across the country as #1 in schools all the time. I think we're #1 in health, #1 in welfare. Come to Massachusetts. I'm glad I live in Lowell. I really am. And Mayor, I know you don't want to hear this. I don't pay a lot of taxes on my house. I think I pay little taxes to live in Lowell for what I get. I just want that in your head. And
Okay.
I don't know a house like yours, though, May. I don't own a house like yours, but I love my house and I don't pay a lot of money to live here. We got to understand how important education is for the city of Lowell. And this one goes out to Bill Tokman. There's nothing more important than education. So I got a good feeling with Eileen Donahue, Mayor. You want to gavel me, go ahead, my friend, because I love you anyways.
You're
But thanks for the
Thank you.
time.
Thank you.
And we should listen to Miss Martin. You'll listen to me for sure. But I'm optimistic about the outcome. I really am. Thank you for the time, Mayor.
Thank you. As submitted as a report of progress from committee member Martin, seconded by Mr. Hoey. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sure. Reports to the superintendent. Mr. Superintendent?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have a couple of reports here tonight, as in addition to the reports on motions from prior motions. The first report here is going to be led by Ms. Phillips, but we also have Mr. Lovato, our special education director, as well as our two in-house attorneys, Mr. Ortiz and Ms. Mosher-Canty, are also on the call, because embedded within this report is also a response to Mr. Dakota's motion of the last school committee meeting about the implications for special education students during the course of this closure. Prior to me passing the microphone, for lack of a better word, over to Ms. Phillips, I just want to take this moment to first thank the incredible staff that we have here in Lowell Public Schools, our teachers, our principals, our support staff, our custodians, any member of our staff, they're all going above and beyond, outside of their job description, beyond the call of duty, to support families and students across the city of Lowell. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to join the team over at the Maury School, and teachers were lined across the street with signs of well wishes to students who are coming to pick up their Chromebook. Signs of "I love you," signs of "we miss you," just signs of reassurance to students and families that while we can't be here in person, we're here in spirit. And I want to just send a word of gratitude on behalf of the committee, on behalf of the entire city, to all of the staff members who are stepping up to serve our families in an extraordinary time of need. Second, I want to send our collective best wishes to the many family members who are being hit directly by this incredible virus, being hit in the home with the virus taking a toll on their loved ones. And I want to say to our community members who are feeling the significant and direct implications of a virus that we've never experienced before, our hearts are with you, our thoughts are with you, our prayers are with you, and we stand with you. Second, I want to make sure we are also saying that our support is with the families who are being hit economically. Ms. Martin spoke to it. The reason that the revenue is projected to have a significant shortfall for the district is because an unprecedented number of employees are now unemployed. Those tax rolls are falling short because businesses are closed. People are out of work. Those people are our parents, they are our families, they are our friends, they are our neighbors. And I also want to say that neighbors were with you as well. And we understand our role in this economy as an employer. We understand our role in this economy, as Mr. Hoey said, in terms of providing support for children during the course of the day so that families can work. And we are with you as well, those that have been hit economically directly through this closure. Now, with that said, we have been moving forward under the guise of 3 tenets to make sure that we are collaborating across this community and across other communities to make sure we can provide the best of support for all of our families, that we are communicating as clearly as possible everything that we know as we know it. Ms. Martin also said it's shifting sands, it's shifting tides, as things evolving as we go. If you recall, it was a really hard decision to close this district for 2 weeks. That now seems inevitable if we look back in time, but place ourselves back in that time. This thing is just evolving really quickly, and we're working to make sure that we communicate as clearly as we possibly can. And we're third, making sure that we work with a sense of passion, understanding that this thing is evolving for our families as well. Later on tonight, you're going to take up an action to eliminate spring break so that we can recognize the routines that our families have established, recognizing that we've got to change our calendar in accordance with the needs of our family, making sure we're working from a sense of passion. With that, Mr. Mayor, there is an entire report that is within the school committee packet. We are prepared to walk the committee through this report really for the benefit of the community, because none of these items are new to the committee. We've worked really hard to make sure as a committee that we're taking your guidance and advice throughout, and that we're providing you these updates regularly. We can provide this update to you as a report of progress where it's within your report, within your packet, or Ms. Phillips is ready and prepared to share with you this report and walk through it with you online. As well, as I said, Special Education Director Lobato, as well as our attorneys Ortiz and Moshe Kanti are also available to provide that update and that response to Mr. Dakota's motion. Whatever be the will of the committee, we are prepared to do.
Okay, so the COVID-19 response is to Mr. Dakota's.
There's a part of it there. The question, Mr. Mayor, would you like us to walk through the entire presentation, or would you like us to simply jump to that response?
Well, no, I think it's important for the people watching that you go through this. But
Okay.
I would go through it quickly. You don't have to elaborate on every page. I would just read the highlights. It's a lot of good information, but just go through the highlights and go quickly through it would be nice.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Phillips? Mr. Hall, Dr. Hall, can you share the presentation on the screen for the public? And Ms. Phillips, can you walk through it?
Yes.
Philip, are you going to share it?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, school committee members, and Dr. Boyd. So I'll go quickly through the presentation. So our schools have been closed since March 16th. Our projected return date is Monday, May 4th. We're receiving regular updates from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and we'll keep everyone informed if any changes are made. I shared the communication tools that we've been using. I want to highlight that our bilingual family liaisons have been reaching out to our newcomer families to make sure that they're connected to the information in the languages that they've requested. Also, our educators, our school staff are using the language line to communicate with families who indicated a need for communication in a language other than English. And some of our schools are also using language apps, which allow them to text with families, and the messages are translated. So we are continuing to provide meal service. This meal service continues even when school is out, when we have our school holidays. We have since added 3 sites, the Maury, the Saclosa, and the Westminster Village Apartments. Families can get lunch and breakfast for the next day, and on Fridays, families are able to pick up weekend meals for their children. Also, we are very thankful for some community partnerships that have donated important items, which we've been able to share at our food distribution site. Katie's Closet has donated much needed toiletries. Middle Miss Foundation provided activity bags for our students, and our partnership with Greater Boston Food Bank, we've been able to give out boxes of food to families in need. Families are notified via Connect Ed when these toiletries, food boxes, and other distributions are available at their site. So it's not at every site every week, but we are trying to make sure that we reach every site. There was already some discussion around the emergency shelter that was open at the Saclosa Middle School. This is information that was taken from the press release that was shared by the city, and at the link below, our community members can access more information about that. So remote learning, at the beginning of April, Dr. Boyd and Paul Burgess, the UTL president, issued a joint letter announcing an agreement between the district and the UTL We provided guidance around how the remote learning program would be implemented. We provided detailed outlines to each grade level. And for each grade level, there's a suggested schedule of learning, so how long to spend on different subject areas depending on the grade level. These materials were not only shared online on the website, through social media, through email, also at our lunch distribution sites. They were translated into Spanish, Portuguese, Khmer, and Swahili. And in these plans, we're asking students to engage for approximately half the length of a regular school day, so 3 to 3.5 hours. And this is a combination of educator-directed learning and student-directed learning. Our high school students are having new content that they are learning. This is aligned with their course syllabi, the syllabus for each course. And then our students in pre-K through 8, our focus of their learning is reinforcement of skills and concepts that they've already learned. So in order to support remote learning, our curriculum office and our school staff have been distributing Chromebooks, and they have been surveying families to determine their access to the internet and their access to devices needed for online learning. They started with distribution at the high school level, and the middle schools and K-8s are almost complete. The first round are almost complete. We're beginning the elementary school assessment. And then when that's complete, a second round of distributions will happen for each level. So schools are continuing to reach out to families to assess their needs, but families can also contact their school, or they can contact our Family Resource Center, and we can connect them with the schools to keep them updated about the status of their requests. These devices are on loan. The students will be responsible for returning them in the condition in which they were received, and approximately 3,000 Chromebooks have been distributed thus far. So during this time, we want to make sure we're meeting the needs of all of our students. So I do want to acknowledge the work of our McKinney-Vento specialists and our McKinney-Vento liaison in supporting the needs of our students in foster care and our students who qualify for McKinney-Vento provisions. Those are students experiencing homelessness. So our liaisons have been working with our schools to cross-reference the list of students who are identified in foster care or are identified as homeless, and making sure that they've received the information about the Chromebooks and that they have access to support in implementing remote learning. And this slide is just acknowledging that our foster students our specialists are working with our schools to make sure that our students in a foster care placement are receiving the support they need to be successful in remote learning. So we also want to make sure that our students with special needs, our special education students, are receiving the services. And our Director of Special Education, Mike Lovato, will give a little more information about that. And I just wanted to acknowledge that our English learner, our teachers who are teaching English learners are also contacting their students to determine their needs based on their English level. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mike Lovato to give a little more information about serving students in special education.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, School Committee, Dr. Boyd. I also want to let the committee know that we do continue to receive updates from the federal government and DESE as they come in. And as a special education team, we continue to participate weekly in both the federal webinars and the state webinars. And the participants include Jane and Mike, and then of course my special education team as well. One of the biggest, two of the biggest factors that we've received from DESE is that FAPE is required, free and appropriate education, and the guidance that we're getting is really working around with the teams and the special education department, the providers, the teachers, for what's determining reasonable services. And I know the hardest part for our staff right now is making that decision for what's reasonable, but there are 3 factors that we're providing guidance for to staff. The first factor is looking at what's reasonable for the child based on their disability. Second, it's what's reasonable for the parents to help monitor and implement, and then what's reasonable for staff to implement. With those three factors that I mentioned, it's looking at the supports the teachers need, the building principals need, and then also our community partners and families. So in each of the items that we're about to present, we have training ready, and we've had regular weekly meetings with our staff as well too, to determine what support is needed. And Latifah, if you can go to the next slide, please. So the biggest factor that we're working with our legal department and working with DESE as well too is, in order to provide services during this time, it's about our good faith effort. We know that it's not going to look like the IEP. In fact, we recognize and accept that it's going to look completely different. That's also what we've shared with our special education PAC as well. And so in order for us to get through this with minimal liability, documentation has to be one of our most important factors on how we documenting our good faith effort, documenting our attempts, and documenting the interventions that we provide. We recognize that instruction will be tailored as the current IEP addresses a traditional setting. Now with the changes with the school closure, the IEP is going to address a virtual setting. And, as everybody's aware, it's something that we're all learning as we're going through. But again, the key point that I'd like to stress is that the IEP is not going to look the same in regards to services in a virtual platform. One of the things that we do have to continue forward on is the compliance indicators have not been laxed, and that's our IEP deadlines, evaluations, and each one of our compliance indicators with, with early childhood and evaluation components. Go ahead, Latifah. So with doing so, we have developed distant remote procedures and individualized plans. We have developed procedures for conducting IEP meetings. The temporary distance learning plan that I mentioned, we've streamlined the reevaluation process to look at the kid for the testing that they've had and make decisions where we do not have to replicate testing. And then we've designed support teams within the special education department that include our BCBAs, social workers, school psychologists, and our ETCs to help teachers and admin buildings. We've also worked in collaboration with the SPED PAC, as I mentioned, and then we can just continue to participate with DESE, CREST, and the Council for Exceptional Children. Go ahead, Latifah, please. So with doing so, one of the things that I want to mention with the learning plan is it's not an IEP amendment. It's not an individual education plan. It's not changing the current plan. And this is important for parents to understand because their stay put rights are in place. So the temporary plan that we're developing for kids during a distance learning platform does not change their services for when they come back to school. It is, just as it states, it's temporary, and no changes to the IEP are made. It's a good faith effort, and it addresses the documentation needed to ensure that we are able to show the supports that we provided, and parents have an understanding of what we're trying to do as well. The plan is that it's collaboration with parent. It's identifying the platform, the instruction of, how we're going to do it, progress as what's noted, what we're expecting, weekly activities, and then it's the services that are being provided, and then whatever collaboration is continued needed. Next, please. The IEP process, this, I won't go over every detail on this, but this shows the federal regulations that's continuing to require us to provide IEPs for what annual review meetings look like, reevaluations, initials. And so we have information ready to go for how we handle each one of these areas throughout the department. The evaluation process I've discussed, I'm not going to repeat the additional details unless somebody has questions. But it is, again, making decisions based on students to determine if additional testing is needed so that we can get through this. If additional testing is not needed and a reevaluation is due, through a virtual platform, we can continue to qualify the child and we can continue with services. So it is ensuring that we're in compliance, but most importantly, that we continue to work with the children and we continue to update students' progress with their goals and objectives within the IEP. One of the things that I believe is important, we have received guidance from DESE that tuition payments for out-of-district students have to continue to be paid. We are working with the out-of-district schools on making sure that they're providing virtual plans, making sure that they're attempting to do the same thing that we are. So we have been working within our department to make those payments. It also ensures that a seat is held for our students in these critical areas with some critical need. And we do continue to get guidance. I know that this is a hot topic within the state, and it comes up at each one of the DESE meetings. And I do believe on the agenda for this Thursday, it's going to be an agenda item again to rediscuss and get further information. And of course, I'll provide that information to Ms. Desmond and Dr. Boyd if anything changes. But at this point, we have received a directive that we are continue to pay tuition for the out-of-district placement. Next slide, please. This is the definition for free and appropriate education. I just added that in there because we do get in the habit of saying FAPE all the time, and I just wanted to make sure that we were talking about what's the Free and Appropriate Public Education Act, and it's really there to protect not just special education students, but there to protect special education as well. And I believe that's the last slide, Latifa. So thank you.
So I'll go through the remainder of the presentation quickly. So regarding grading and report cards were sent out, were mailed out for elementary school students last week, which is aligned with their regular schedule. Middle and high school report cards, their schedules are under review, and later in this meeting, there will be a discussion around the grading policy under new business. Also on Friday, April 10th, we received an update from the DESE commissioner relating to the statewide student assessment. And it's been, the testing requirement has been waived for the 2019-2020 school year. So the administration of the MCAS tests have been canceled, and we'll provide more information as we receive it. I just want to acknowledge that our at-home learning page is still available. Families should still feel free to access that for additional links, resources, apps to support learning at home. And in addition to the at-home learning, the academic learning, we also have resources for social emotional needs. And we are also connecting our families with resources they may need. They can call our Family Resource Center. They can call their school. The Family Resource Center is shared there on the slide. I also want to acknowledge the hard work of our social workers, and our central lead, Ingrid Markman, has been coordinating our social workers and reaching out to students with mental health concerns. Not only the students on their case loads, but they've also been reaching out to students who teachers have reported as concerning. They're providing individual and group check-ins. They are working on a multi-tiered plan of action. So supporting students in a virtual classroom, as well as providing direct support, calls, check-ins. And then a tier 3 crisis intervention would be for our students who are most at risk. We're thankful for our partnership with Leahy Crisis Services, who's agreed to provide well checks for our students and families when they present a strong mental health concern, but have not reached the point of calling 911. So we recognize that there are important academic supports for our students, but it's important to also address and acknowledge the mental needs, the health needs that families and students may be having. So ongoing matters, registration is delayed. We are exploring some online options, both for the kindergarten and pre-K, which was scheduled for March 30th. And we've also put out a request for proposals for qualifications for an online registration system. It may not be able, this system may not be able to support our pre-K and K registration, but it definitely helps to put us in a better place as we move into next year and future registrations. April vacation will be discussed under new business. Graduation is scheduled for June 3rd. We're continuing to monitor the situation, and June 24th has been identified as a backup date. And we've gotten some questions about school prom, and our high school leadership team is meeting with class officers to determine any contingency dates, backup dates for school prom. So our offices have been closed since March 17th. However, our staff have been working remotely, and families can continue to reach out to the Family Resource Center and central office with any questions they may have. They should also feel welcome to call their schools directly, and they can get their questions answered that way. And I believe that concludes the presentation, and the phone numbers are there. There's also an online form for families to put in requests for any needs they may have.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Phillips, Mr. Lovato. The team's available for questions.
Hello.
Ms. Doherty had a question? Dr. Hall, can you see me?
You can see you, Mayor. Ms. Doherty's on now, and Mr. Hoey's unmuted.
Okay.
Doherty had a question.
Yes, I had a couple of quick questions on that. So the first question regarding slide number 7, when you talked about the remote learning outreach, you mentioned those detailed outlines, which I did see them on the website, and that they're translated into different languages. Is everybody hearing feedback, or is it just me?
Got a radio going. Everybody mute themselves if they're not talking. Thank you. Sure, Ms. Doherty.
My question was regarding that slide where you talked about the information that was shared with families, and I'm just wondering, how are you sharing it with families who do not have access to the internet?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Doherty. Right now, what we're doing is we're reaching out to every family. Every school has made contact with as many families as possible. We're making, there's still a few families at some schools that we haven't reached out to, haven't connected with, despite multiple outreaches. But within those conversations with families, we're doing that type of survey. Who needs what? What I'm talking with principals every week. I talk to each principal in a one-on-one check-in. What I'm hearing from principals at this point is that they're feeling very confident in those surveys, feeling very confident in being able to provide Chromebook access for first round. We're now getting updates on the next level of individuals that now that we provided 3,000 Chromebooks, what are the next level of individuals that we need to provide to that are might not have been hit in that first round. We're also within that we're also surveying access. And in some cases, they have to get individuals get the Chromebooks and then understand and identify the gap within the access.
Sorry, I just want to make sure I got the answer. So you said that people who don't have internet access, you're still surveying who those people are through individual schools.
Individual schools are reaching out to every student. Yes, if that's the entirety of the answer you're looking for. Individual schools are reaching out to individual students.
So they're reaching out to them around internet if they don't have internet.
Every bit of their need for remote learning. So within that conversation is everything that they need for remote learning.
Okay, thank you. So if I had 2 more questions, Your Honor. So the other one is related to the Chromebooks, which you mentioned. My only question with the Chromebooks is regarding those, the Chromebooks that we're giving out, and I know Ms. Johnson mentioned in her report that we're loaning them. I understand that many of these Chromebook carts, these computer carts are expensive. Schools have purchased them out of their precious few supply budget. And I want to know if there's a plan in place for replenishing those Chromebooks and holding the schools harmless for that, because even though they're on loan, there are going to be issues with getting them back working or even getting them back at all. And have you thought about that yet, or is that something you'll be addressing down the road?
Yeah, I mean, right now, what you have heard through Ms. Martin's summary of the budget, we don't even know what revenue we're going to have. The original forecast that we had included within it a plan to provide upward of $1 million of additional technology support. Should the revenue hold to that, which we have little confidence that it would, we would have had significant technology resources to not only replenish, but to increase the ratio. I will tell you right now, one, we've got a commitment to get out the resources we need to our families immediately, as quickly as possible, to support remote learning. However, we can't commit any additional resources right now. So I can't make a commitment to you about having $1 million of additional technology support. We will do everything we possibly can to, one, manage these resources, to make sure that the risk is minimal, to make sure then the loss is minimal, and we will do everything we possibly can to make sure not only do we replenish them, but we increase the amount of technology supply throughout the district. But that's as far as I can go with a firm commitment, if I'm being honest with you, Committee Member Doherty.
I appreciate that, and I think that it is important. That has to be, one of those priority decisions we're looking at with limited resources. So the last one really has to do, and I know this isn't going to shock my colleagues, that I'm concerned about the mental health resources for our students, and I was happy to see slide 16, and then there was an additional slide that I didn't have originally, but it was addressed about the mental health needs. So one thing that jumped out, and again, it speaks to communication. You said that people can reach out to the Family Resource Center. And I know we've got a line that, people can call. But when you're talking about mental health concerns, to me, it seems like it would be better to go directly to your school, because if you call the Family Resource Center, you mentioned that there's an SEL team member, right? So I'm just wondering, what are the supports in place for parents to get directly to the social workers or the clinicians who actually know their students, who, the ones that are at the schools? And is there a way to kind of dovetail, do both of that?
Yeah, so thank you, Committee Member Doherty. We also this week have provided, every principal has a cell phone now that is connected directly to the line of the school. Those cell phones are then being disseminated to the clerks. So remotely, every school clerk will have access to the phone line. So we will be getting each school, as those get up and running, will be communicating out to their school community that their phone is now live and they can call the school directly. So the same way that we're communicating out with each school, each principal has been provided access to a cell phone, direct line to the school. Principals are then connecting those with their clerks, and then we'll be getting the information out to families when they're live.
Thank you very much for that. So I'm done with my questions, Your Honor, but I would like to make a motion at this point that's directly related to the mental health supports in our schools, not just looking at what we're doing remotely, but what we've got in place in a normal school year, because as we're facing these tight budget decisions, I think we need to be looking at what we're doing to support our staff and the mental health of our students. So I'd like to make a motion that we get a report that outlines the structures in place to support the mental health needs of our students. The report should include the roles of student support specialists and social workers, as well as address the delivery and oversight of mental health supports across the district. And I would make that in the form of a motion to get that information as soon as possible, hopefully before we have to make any severe budget decisions.
Let's second that.
Sure. Motion by Ms. Doherty, second by Ms. Martin. Thank you. Ms. Martin, you had a question?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I actually just had a couple quick questions too. I've asked, I know, a number of times regarding the status of hotspots in the city. And I know that we're checking that. It would be great to actually get a definitive answer. If families are having a difficult time making that connection, all the Chromebooks in the world are not going to help us. So I'm just curious if we've heard anything, gotten anything, again, definitive from the cable provider that this is in fact a service that our families, no matter what their economic circumstance, are able to access that.
Thank you. Ms. Desmond, do you have anything more specific since the last answer provided?
I do not have more specific. What I will say is that we reached out to families personally to connect them with a Chromebook. At the time that they picked up the Chromebook, we provided them with information around the 60-day free access through Comcast, and also the website to be able to look up via your zip code the hotspot. We also provided them with a 3-page doc that provided them a lot of information. One is a telephone number to our help desk if they're having any problems with their Chromebook or connectivity. And so as those calls come in, we're helping to problem solve trouble. Given the fact that you may not be able to get online if you can't connect. And so that's why there's a telephone number. And so as those calls come in, we're fielding them. We haven't had a lot of calls around the hotspot as of right now, but we're still in dissemination. We disseminated at 3 schools today. We did 3 schools yesterday. And so by Friday, we'll have completed all of our elementary, middle, and high schools. So as those calls come in, we will address them.
So you basically have set up like a phone line that families can reach out to if they're having trouble with their internet connection.
That's
right,
or anything with regards to getting online and accessing their device. So if they're having a problem with even charging the device, we can troubleshoot them through that. If they're having a hard time logging in, because we are giving out a combination of MacBook Pros and Chromebook. There's different logins for those. We explain it at the point of contact when we're disseminating the devices, and I'm there. I'm with everybody, so I know this is happening. And as I said, some people hear the information and they drive home, and when they get home, they it's a new world if it's a different device than you're used to, right? So we just want to make sure that it's our standard help desk. It's what our staff in the IT department, and I have to give them kudos. They worked extraordinarily hard, the entire IT department, to help get these devices out in the hands of kids. And so they're used to the help desk, manning the help desk, and they were taking calls just before I came online. I got a message that there was a call that I had to support. So it is working. And as we sort of navigate these new waters, we will try to help everybody with their needs.
I think that's excellent. That's great. If my only request would be, could we kind of, I know that that we have an individual through our engagement office who's doing kind of the posting on Facebook and getting the information out over social media. That's where I had been seeing the kind of concerns from families that they hadn't been able to connect. If we could do a post that provides that hotline of what to do if your Chromebook isn't working and how to, just so it can be a widely shared resource for families in the city, I think that would be great. But I think that's exactly the kind of service that we need to help parents. Again, if you put a Chromebook in my hands, I wouldn't know what to do with it either. So,
well, we have that 3-page document.
Oh, really? Would that help me? Oh, look at Ms. Desmond with the smart mouth answer. I like it.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I had 2 others. Sorry about that. I did have a question, Mr. Lovato, around the residential program. So we have students placed right now where we're not allowed to pay for contracted services that we're not receiving. Are all of our students who are in these residential programs still located in these programs? And are we getting assurance from them around the kind of health and safety that's in place for our students who are in residential programs? Obviously, it's a big concern for groupings of students and young people, and just if you've had any communication around that.
Yeah, School Committee Martin, we've been in consistent communication with them. They send us emails back and forth as they're developing learning plans for our students. They're providing them to us. I was on conference call with 2 different agencies last week, and then they continue to participate in the weekly meetings as well. Now what we're working on now is confirming that all of our kids who are actually placed out of district, we're working with not only the residentials, but the out of district placements as well too, to ensure we have updated learning plans from them as well. We have not heard of anything in regards to safety that would be alarming. I'm sure that there may be some possibilities of positive identifications, just as there is in many areas of the community, but nothing that they've shared with us that we would be alarmed.
Okay. I'm just thinking, I mean, it would follow along the lines of, some of these other facilities where there could be, unexpected shutdowns or closures or things like that. But I'm relieved to hear that they're in good communication, and that hasn't been the case. My only other question was around the virtual registration, Ms. Phillips. Looking at a program, I think that's great. I will tell you that we have, and I say this from, kind of the world I live in, we've gone pretty much all virtual and remote in terms of all of our provision of services, which is a lot like your registration process, where you're collecting documentation and a lot of that other private information. We have been able to do it with using our existing data systems and using existing technology. So I would say if you have any questions, we'd be certainly happy to help with that. As you're moving forward with, rather than purchasing a new system in this kind of environment, we may be able to offer you some insight.
Great, thank you.
Thanks. That's it for me, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, thank you. Mr. Hoey?
Yeah, just a couple of quick things. Latifa, thank you for this report. Is there anybody from the Family Resource Center sitting, listening right now? Other than Latifa? I know she's the boss of it, but is any of her staff here with you tonight?
Yes, Mr. Hoey, I'm here.
Who else is you, Rebecca?
Rebecca Duda, I'm here.
Anybody else from your office?
I haven't seen anyone else yet, sir.
Someone earlier, but that's okay. Nice job with this. I know what you're doing. I like a little bit of a sense of how many phone calls you're receiving in that office every day.
Well, it varies from day to day. So, for example, when something new is about to happen in the center, calls tend to go up. So, for example, pre-K registration was supposed to begin the week we closed. So we had a spike in phone calls. And then when the food truck started, we had a spike in phone calls. Chromebook, the same thing. We're getting more emails now through our online form than we are getting phone calls. And we fielded between emails and phone calls approximately 400 inquiries through the Family Resource Center.
Okay. Thanks. So I just want to Family Resource Center, I think in the past couple of years, it's incredible. I say it all the time. Central office, same thing right now. But we do have to look at things through a different set of eyes right now. Money's probably going to stop coming, but special ed is something that I think we need to have a few subcommittees on, almost as many as we have on finance, because I'm afraid about cuts. I am afraid. And I want to make sure we have like plenty of, for instance, one-on-one paras, something that bothers me. I think a few times in my life, I wasn't treated right with my family, and they were having volunteers instead of someone that's a professional when they had an IEP. We didn't do nothing about it because we just, I know a lot of people are fighting over IEPs and what their children should have, but it's a big concern of mine, special ed. I think Ms. Doherty's in charge of it. And if she's not, I hope she is, because that department there to me, we have a lot of things we need to talk about before the budget. I know pretty soon we're going to talk about motions and stuff, and I'll have more to say then. Right now, I'm not going to say much more than Mr. Lovato, thank you for what you're doing, and just keep up the hard work. I know it's not easy to come in and replace people. But I have some concerns, and I just want to make sure that my fellow colleagues know that, to me, special ed has to be at the top of our list, and I believe it is with most of our colleagues. And I believe we know teachers don't have enough tools in the classroom to do their job. So I'm really concerned about special ed, and I want some subcommittees coming up. I don't even know if I'm on it or not, but I want to be part of them. Thank you for the time, Mayor.
Any other questions? Mr. Dillon?
Yeah, I just would like to ask maybe yourself and Dr. Boyd, anytime they get you guys get information about the shelter at the Stocklosa, just keep us up to date, because I'm just concerned with that whole situation. And we are, if there are questions about going back to school, then that's going to be, that's going to be something that we're really going to have to keep an eye on, and we're going to have to make sure that that transition back into that school building is, it's going to need a lot of attention. So if you could just keep the committee, everybody in the committee updated, if and when you guys get updates on that whole situation, that would be great.
Sure. Let me just say that, anybody over there that tests positive leaves immediately. These are for people that are asymptomatic, may have come in contact with someone that tests positive, and we need to help out and take care of this population. So I understand the concern that if school goes back, we may have to come up with an alternative situation again. But again, these are the most, these are people who need our help, and we are proud to help them. And you deal with this with the public every day, Mr. Dillon, and you know how much they need our assistance. So we will keep the school safe. We'll keep anybody that goes in it safe. But, as a city, we're proud to help these people, as you do every day. So we will monitor the situation, let everybody know.
All right. Yeah. No, thank you.
Sure. Anybody else, Mr. Dakota? Or
I have a quick question for Mr. Lovato.
Sure.
Mike, do you anticipate DESE in collaboration with the federal government and so forth, coming up with other special ed edicts that would change how we provide services to our kids?
Excuse me, are you asking about like the services or the compliance factors?
Well, are you anticipating that the commissioner is going to come forward with other alterations to the current way that we are servicing our special ed clients? Are you anticipating anything like that or not?
No, not really. The federal government has been pretty clear with the state that in order to change any laws that are in place or in regards to delivery, that would be a process that has to happen at the federal government. They did let the state know that they were going to allow some lax reporting rules on how that works in regards to some of the compliance factors. But basically what they've told us is, services, there has to be, the collaborative partnership on deciding what that looks like. So it's hard to say that, services are going to be black and white anymore. It's going to be really looking at the families. In some cases, I've talked to some family members that have multiple disabilities at home as far as students, and they're just really not interested in the academic component. They're having to struggle with life on what that looks like because of outside factors along with the disabilities. And so what we're doing is we're finding out just how to support that. They have been clear that if we're able to document our good faith and provide reasonable, that we should be okay. We are getting ready within the special education department to, see what possible outcomes come from this. I know that parents may be frustrated, and we're getting ready for if we have summer school, what does that look like? And then we're anticipating, some overflow when come September, and we're ready for that as well too. But there's really not laws that are developed for times like this. It's really suggested guidance, and then each individual district working with each other is working with the teams to develop what services look like.
So for instance, a follow up on that. So for instance, a speech pathologist, how can that person be working with can they still do that remotely?
Yes, they can, and it doesn't have to look like, for example, it doesn't have to be a virtual platform. As far as like through teletherapy, it could be through consultation. I am advising as many people as possible if they can work in collaboration with units. For example, if they're providing iReady as the academic platform, can the speech pathologist work on their goals alongside the teacher? But that's the part that's going to change. If the speech pathologist, for example, has 30 minutes direct service in the IEP, it's not reasonable to think that that's going to happen the same way. And so that's why we've created the distance learning plan so that they can document how they're going to do it. And with the speech pathologists, social workers, teachers, and all the related service providers, they're the experts in their field and they understand the disability. And so what we're saying is, based on the circumstances that we're in today, the IEP is a reference point. What do services look like that are reasonable for everybody to provide? So they're not going to be on the hook, so to speak, for what's exactly written in the IEP. It's our good faith effort and what's reasonable.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Clark?
I just want to say thank you very much to all of you for the hard work that you're doing, you and your teams, and for the comprehensive responses to our questions and the documentation that you're providing. I just want to acknowledge that, and I look forward to hearing more as this continues, kind of as we manage through this kind of unknown space. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Superintendent, next report.
I think Mr. Dillon's trying to raise a hand, Mr. Mayor.
You guys have to do this so I can see you.
Mr. Mayor, I was just wondering how many people have been in the shelter before? I think it's because I work with the population. I know what we are expecting there.
Sure.
And I
I've
serve.
only heard maybe just one person might have been there today, so.
Okay. I've been there plenty of times.
To the shelter, yeah. You keep going in and out, Mr. Dillon. Hold on one second. I don't know, you went out.
Oh, here I am.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
I just wanted to mention that because I'm familiar with that population is why I'm worried.
Sure.
And sending our kids back in that school building is a concern. We'll figure it out.
Sure.
We'll figure it out.
Thank you.
Thank
you. Okay. Mr. Superintendent?
Yep. Thank you. Thank you, committee members, for your guidance and advice. Ms. Clark, thank you for the kind words. Ms. Doherty, I'll try to provide a less comprehensive answer the next time. The next time. All right. The next report is one that has been requested by the committee, and I'm happy to share it with you tonight. Obviously, some things had to be delayed with the refocus and redesign of our school system essentially overnight due to this pandemic. This is one of those processes, and I'm happy to share with you the report tonight on our hiring process for the head of school at Lowell High School. Prior to beginning, I know Ms. Bastide was with us or may continue to be with us. I want to thank her for her continued leadership and partnership throughout this process as she transitions into a new role, prospectively into next year. And the entire staff at Lowell High School. I see several names on here. Looks like we're well attended, and I'm sure there's millions and millions watching worldwide on LTC. This process is going to be collaborative with the community. It is going to be transparent for the community, and we are confident that it will yield an extraordinary leader for our young people going forward into an extraordinary time of a newly constructed high school. Dr. Guillory is going to share this presentation. I am appointing Dr. Guillory to lead the hiring process personally on my behalf. He will be heading up the entirety of the search and hiring process directly, which is atypical for us. Typically, the Human Resource Department will head up the processes for the principal, but given the spotlight on this particular job, as well as the proud tradition of Lowell High School within this community, I feel it is our obligation to look at Lowell High School a little bit differently with regard to the head of school search. And Dr. Guillory, as our chief schools officer, some people are not aware previously served as the deputy superintendent of the Rochester City School District, which is a school district that actually is larger than Lowell Public Schools. So Dr. Guillory comes to us with an extraordinary amount of experience and now has in-depth knowledge, having worked directly hand in hand with Lowell High School since coming here on board as our chief schools officer. So Dr. Guillory, if you could provide an update where we are, where we're going with the head of school hiring process. Dr. Guillory?
Thank you, Dr. Barton, to the school committee. Thank you for teeing me up nicely. I think many of the comments that have been shared tonight directly relate or play into the direction that we want to take this head of school search. So I'm going to share my screen with you and walk you through the presentation. So the topics that we want to touch on tonight is certainly the position, the opening, the timeline that we want to adhere to, the broad scale community engagement that we're seeking, the selection process, and then the recommendation to the superintendent for final determination. Our head of school opening, the question is, how did we get here? On March 2nd, Principal Bastide announced that she would be transitioning to support us in central office. At that time, she submitted a letter to Lowell High School families as well as the community. Shortly thereafter, the impact of the COVID-19 caused us to pause and let's see. Caused us to pause, and we've shifted our priorities to focusing on the needs of responding to our families. The timelines and the steps taken to date. As of March 2nd, again, we had the announcement of the position opening, and you've seen these slides. You've seen these slides already in terms of the shutdown for the closure. Our plan was to certainly begin the search prior to those phases of the pandemic taking over, but at that time we had to pause to regroup ourselves and focus on those initiatives. Our projected timeline moving forward, our goal is to post the position no later than April 24th. That could be as soon as tomorrow that we get it posted using the existing services that our HR office uses. But our goal, as Dr. Boyd said, is to get the best qualified candidate to serve and support our students at Lowell High School. And with that, we're going to be looking to engage in a nationwide search. We recognize the short timeline that we're on here. It's an aggressive timeline, but it's one that we are committed to make sure that we have the very best person to come in and continue taking Lowell High School to the next level. Our goal is to receive applications through May 15th. We'll be doing a rolling review in partnership with Human Resources, our Human Resources Department, to make sure that all folks that are applying for the job meet the minimum qualifications, and those minimum qualifications certainly pertain to certification and levels of experience. The community engagement forums that we will be looking for, I have it listed as to be announced. Certainly these will take place prior to the first interview that's hosted. Our goal is to make sure that we get everyone that's interested in this community to give their voice, to give their input, to give their ideas as to who, what, and how the next leader should be of Lowell High School. So we want to make sure that we're certainly right now planning for a virtual presence. But if we are able to return, we'll certainly shift those to in-person if approved and appropriate. Our goal is to establish a screening committee. This will be the committee that vets the candidates, that pairs those folks that are applying down to the 3 individuals. Our goal is then to interview applicants, May 18th through May 22nd, and then recommend 3 candidates to the superintendent. Last week of May, we're proposing a community meet the finalists forum. So again, bringing those finalists out to the community so that the community can see who they are, ask any questions, provide input, intel into who they would like to see serving as the next leader of Lowell High School. And then our superintendent makes the final selection of the candidate by the end of June 2020 for a July 1 start. Our community engagement, we certainly want to make folks aware of this. So many of the platforms that we presently use locally to get folks involved, we want to leverage those. Our phone calls, emails, the website, social media, emails to our staff, families, and students. We want to make sure that we take advantage of those, as well as the translation services that we are presently employing to make sure that all stakeholders have their voice heard and are at the table. We want to make sure that our community engagement forums that we're looking to host, a student forum, a staff forum, as well as a community forum. So again, we want to be transparent, we want to be collaborative, and we want to make sure that everyone has their voice heard. And so we're looking at setting up surveys so that, again, folks can submit, respond to questions around the attributes they're looking for, seeking in the next head of school. And then certainly another opportunity will be when we meet finalists. When we initially were thinking about this or launching this earlier in March, we were thinking about turning this over to an external consultant and certainly looking at the pros and cons, the advantages and disadvantages of external versus internal. Certainly the COVID crisis, the pandemic has now shifted that focus, and I think it's super critical for us to lead this internally, but then leverage external consultants as appropriate for some of the skills that we may not necessarily be able to bring to the table. And so again, we want to make sure that we have that national reach. So that would be an opportunity to engage in some outside or some external consultants to bring that piece to the table. We may want to have some folks support us in some of our community forums, those types of actions where our internal staff may be limited or overtaxed with what we're currently working through in terms of making sure that our district is up and running as best we can for our students and families. So we want to make sure that we keep those options on the table. And so the recommendation.
Well, Dr. Guillory, I think you got a little bit of Mike Dillon syndrome occurring here with your screen freezing. But I think to summarize here for the committee and the public who just experienced the superintendent search process, you're going to see a lot of the same elements play out here. We're not looking to reinvent the wheel here. We're going to take the elements that worked there with the superintendent search process. So as Dr. Guillory was talking about the blended work, you may look at Dr. Guillory's role in leading it being akin to how Committee Member Martin was leading the process on behalf of the committee before, and where he was talking about some external support in order to get a nationwide reach. You remember the committee did engage the School Committee Association to get that external reach. We're going to make sure that we take advantage of every resource available to us to make sure that we get the very best head of school for Lowell High School. And I have high confidence in Dr. Guillory's leadership of this. I thank him for stepping up and accepting my appointment to lead this search, and I'm looking forward to the next phase of Lowell High School. And committee will continue to apprise you throughout, and school community, you will be involved throughout this process, and the broader community will continue to be apprised as benchmarks are met. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll yield the floor to questions. Mr. Guillory, Dr. Guillory, I did my best in your frozen screen. All right.
I wasn't sure how much I had frozen.
All the way, buddy.
So, Mr. Hoey?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to start by saying I'm excited too. I want to see what my friend Linus can do. Just as excited about Ms. Desmond being in charge of the high school and what we're going to do for children about just with trade schools and physical activity. So I'm excited about him being in charge of principals. The only point I want to make to my new colleague, I think my older colleagues know what I'm talking about. All this could be fine, right down to the point when it says the superintendent makes the final decision. We all got to understand that. We can debate it. We can talk about things. But when they come down to be finalists, we need a lot of people to stay out of that business, including me or anybody else. His job is to pick the person that's going to run the second biggest high school in the state. And I hope my colleagues understand how hard I feel about this issue, because I think it's an issue that has affected the city of Lowell over the past 10 to 12 years. And I hope that we do this the proper way. And I think Linus Hillary is going to be something special. I think if I'm wrong, Mr. Superintendent, please stop me, but Mrs. Bastide's also working with Linus too right now. Is that correct?
Yes, Ms. Bastide is actually, I think still in the audience. I get this, we have, I think 1.5 million attendees, so I
No,
can't.
I'm almost done here, but
All right.
I like the idea of Mrs. Bastide being around. She just finished, well, she's finishing up 3 years. I know how much she loved my granddaughter and every kid in that high school. And she walked into a place that, to me, it's like walking into a fire, Mike. She had a tough job, and now she's going to be able to throw her real experience to me, which is, we don't need her help because I think Jim Hall is fine with HR experience, but Mrs. Bastide's very sharp with HR experience also. So I think this process will be great. I just think we all need to, whether we see it in the Facebook, keep your nose out of the final decision. Thank you, Mayor, for the time.
Yeah. Thank
I
you.
do not see my name there.
I don't see anybody's hand up, but I had a couple suggestions.
Why do they not see my name? They keep saying, oh, we
Okay.
don't know if she was here.
Mr. Dillon first.
Ms. Bastide, you're not on mute anymore, so we see your name and hear your frustration.
So,
But
Mr.
thank you, Ms.
Dillon?
Bastide.
Did you have a question, Mr. Dillon?
I was just celebrating I was back. I got booted for
Oh,
a
all
little
right. I thought you wanted to. I just had a few comments. I know this is a very aggressive timeline, but seeing that we haven't gotten this right in the last two searches, to put it bluntly, I think we're going a little too fast. I think we should, because I don't know when would the applications have to be in by and the deadline stop if we're going to interview on the 18th. That doesn't give us a lot of time. I think when we do the process and we advertise it, I think when we do make the first cut, I think the 3 finalists or 4 finalists should get an interview, a walkthrough of the high school. I know it's difficult because we don't have school in session, but I think the next person coming in here should know what they're dealing with. They should know what administration they have to work with, what support systems they have to work with, and the atmosphere and the what's going on at the high school. I think that's going to be very important for this next person to come in. So I would like to see us relax it maybe by a couple of weeks. And I have said this to you, Mr. Superintendent, we need a whole plan for that high school. I think we can't just drop a headmaster in there. I think as a school committee, we should get behind you and support you in this. But there's some changes that may have to be made over there. You can't just drop somebody in there and expect them to take that high school over. It's too big, it's too complicated, and it's too important to us. They need to have a say, maybe in some administration help that they're going to need, positions that they might like to see changed around, and to give support to the house masters so the housemasters can complement the headmaster. So that would be my suggestion. I don't know how the committee feels about this, but I think it's just a little too fast right now. And, you know, we have to be blunt about it, that we haven't had success with the last two positions. So I don't know how anyone else feels about that. Ms. Martin?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. You know, I agree with what you're saying, and I think we should be we need to be open to being flexible. I think at this point, if we could kind of approve this timeline as it stands, but with the recognition and letting the administration and Dr. Boyd and Dr. Guillory know that that first screening is going to be what tells the tale. So I think that if after that first screening, our leadership feels that they don't have enough quality, a deep enough pool to choose from, then I think it's time to come back to the committee and we can rethink what our timeline is. I'd say, you know, at this point, to at least get the posting out there and do the advertising so that we can see what we have to deal with. We can always pull back and say, we need to do more. We need to, kind of adjust our timeline appropriately. But I'd probably do that once we get into the process, at least start the process with these dates and then realize that we may have to readdress them just given the situation we're in.
All right. And how do you feel about the support that the new person may get? Years ago, we had people groomed and come up through the system. We don't seem to have that lately. So we hire someone, they come into a totally new system. Quite frankly, they don't have any allies over there. They get thrown into the lion's den, and it's not a recipe for success. So any thoughts on that?
I think one of the key changes we've made is having we have a head of schools who's really going to be responsible for that onboarding. Honestly, it will be the entire administrative team, but I think and that's on us. That's a failing from the district perspective, that we need to provide any new person coming in with an appropriate onboarding process so that they can, be able to get into the position, be able to learn what they need to learn, and be able to be effective, hopefully in a quicker manner. But I think that's a professional responsibility that the central office holds, ensuring that we get first off the right person, but then we support that person as they move into the position. And I think you're right. That's going to be a critical way that we define the success of this next leader as the head of school at Lowell High.
Thank you. Ms. Doherty, did you have a question?
Thank you. Yes, I want to make a comment about supports. I think that the high school has been running without that number 2 position, the director of curriculum position, for the entire time that Ms. Bastide has been in that role. That is unheard of, to not have that number 2 position. I think we should be really looking hard at bringing back that position. We had somebody leave the role when money was tight and we didn't have the resources, just like we let go of the library aides and we've lost a lot of paras in the elementary grades. I mean, these are decisions that are impacting thousands of students and our staff. So I completely support this idea of having the supports in place that the next person can be successful. I think that if we can get that posting out, today's the 15th, we're looking at a month of posting, giving people a month to apply. That's reasonable. If we start looking at 2 or 3 weeks to apply, I think we're not, casting a wide enough net, giving ourselves enough time to really get the quantity and quality that we're looking for. So I agree with Ms. Martin that we can stick to this timeline, but have some flexibility. And then my last point is a request. I'd like to see the current job description of the head of schools, just kind of as a reminder, maybe send it out to everybody, as well as the posting, just for my information purposes. And then in terms of the consultant piece, I think that the hybrid model makes a lot of sense. As the superintendent referenced, when we did the superintendent search, we used MASC and it was only $10,000. I think we want to be looking closely at keeping our consultant costs low, but really getting the most bang for our buck. So I really appreciate Dr. Guillory's approach with this hybrid, going outside where we can really get value where we need it, which I would think would be the outreach part. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dakota, did you have a question?
I just wanted to make a comment. I think the words that some of you were looking for was to navigate the political waters at Lowell and to make the new head of school successful is really to be able to learn the political climate that we have here in Lowell, which can be challenging. I'll use that word. But I think that's what we need to do to help out whoever that candidate is. And I agree. I think with my colleagues, I think at least the current scheduling of it, I think works. I don't think we're rushing things and giving them a month to apply and then see. I agree with Ms. Martin, and let's see where we're at after that, and then and make adjustments if we need to. But
Sure,
I
thank you.
agree.
Ms. Clark, did you have anything? Comment? All set. Mr. Dillon? Sure, go ahead, Ms. Clark.
I was just going to say, I agree. And I think having just come off a search like the superintendent search, where we're using some of the same tools and tactics, I think that experience will serve us well in this next search. So thank you.
Sure. Mr. Dillon, before I get to Mr. Hoey, you all set? All set. Okay, Mr. Hoey.
Thank you again, Mayor. I'm glad Mrs. Steve's on there now so she can hear me, but the 3 years you've done for us, I want to thank you for all the love you sent to all the children in the little school. And I'm now glad that you're over there working with Lioness on helping to pick the next person. We're about to give 28 schools in our city the power, the principal, all the power, the way Edward Farm was, I think, meant to be. And the same thing I'm saying about the superintendent. Edward Farm gives him all the power to pick this superintendent. So, but with Mrs. Bastide in there helping out Lioness, I want to see what Lioness can do, because I got a feeling we're not going to have them long, to be honest with you. I think someone's going to steal that type of guy away from us. We paid $250,000 to have this new superintendent to come in here and change the city of Lowell, change our schools, because yes, Mayor, you're right. We haven't been able to control or be in charge of the high school, because that person running it don't have the power to fire anybody. She has a hard time. She has to go in there, do the job, and she really can't get rid of anybody she might want to get rid of. So I think this new superintendent with Lioness and Mrs. Bastide and the rest of our team, when they put their heads together.
Excuse me, you need to mean the new headmaster though, right? Because you gotten Dr. Boyd nervous. The new headmaster.
I make mistakes.
Sure.
I could care less about my mistakes. I know my colleagues can hear me. I think this is a time we're going to really shine. But I think he was ready. Lioness was ready to recommend something, Mayor. And when that happened, as soon as he said recommend, he got shut off. So I was a little concerned because I wanted to hear what he was going to recommend us to do. And I think Miss Martin has, it's no problem to follow her either, because I think she wants to recommend what Lioness wants, move on, but leave some openness to it. And I have no problem with that either. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Superintendent, when we, just to another point, it has happened, it hasn't happened. Just when we make calls to the houses in Lowell, Connect Ed, we want to just make sure it says Lowell Public Schools calling, because otherwise people aren't picking up. They think it's a call they don't want to get. So I know we're working on that, but we want to make sure that when we call out, it says Lowell Public Schools, so people answer.
Yeah, my understanding, Mr. Mayor, is that that's more complicated than me just telling you it's going to happen. So I'm trying to figure out why it has not happened yet. And it seems to be, the issue seems to sit with our service provider, our phone service provider being willing to change the coding that's within their system. But we have definitely made that request, and we are starting to make a more than just a request to get that changed, because I think we all agree with you. You see, I think for some people, I'm hearing it shows up as potential spam. Nobody's going to pick that up. So we have notified that. if I could, just the privilege of a point of privilege here, Mr. Mayor, because I know Ms. Bastide's on the call, as are many of our leaders at the high school, and I know how difficult personally it is to hear people talking and referencing you while you're sitting and listening directly. So I want to make sure I can clarify everyone's words. For all of our leadership team at the high school, deeply value the work that all of you are doing. We have a great high school. We have great young people. We've got great staff. Mr. Mayor, if I could, just to clarify, when people talk about the history and what's worked and what hasn't worked, they're talking about a process, and the process itself, I know as I speak to people, there was a lot of criticism of the process and the hiring process. Not for anybody who's listening, none of the remarks at all of the committee should be understood or heard to be criticism of any member of our team. It's a conversation of process. So for all of our team members, those that are listening and perhaps those that are not, every single member of our team is deeply valued by every member of this administration and every member of the school committee. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And to your point, you know, when you get 10 leaders, we just want 10 leaders to be on the same page with the same goal in mind. Because if we're not rowing in the same direction, we're not going to get anywhere. So yeah, that's what we want to do. We're not criticizing the people that are there. We're just saying maybe the system needs to be tweaked so we can work together better in supporting each other. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And also as a just to remind the new committee members that perhaps weren't involved in the search process that brought me here, I previously did supervise all of the comprehensive high schools in the city of Boston. So this type of search is not new to me. It is certainly new with this unique tradition that is Lowell High School, and we're going to be making sure that we can respect that storied tradition throughout. So I thank the committee in its entirety for all of the feedback and advice, and I'll continue to seek that advice from you as committee members and as representatives of the community. So thank you.
Thank you. Before we get to reports on motions, I just want to make sure that we, Ms. Doherty's motion just need an all favor to accept it. I think that was motion by Ms. Doherty, seconded by Ms. Martin, I believe. So is that good, Mary? I can't hear you. You're on mute. Mary's on mute. There you go, Mary. Are we all set on that?
That's Mayor Leahy. All I need is you to say all in favor and everyone agree, and we'll be all set.
Sure. Are we all in favor of that motion?
Yes.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you. Report on motions.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome. Sure, Mr. Superintendent, report on motions.
Thank you. We have two reports here now that are updating within your packet. Ms. Desmond is available to answer any questions on Ms. Clark's response on the makerspace, and Dr. Hall is available for any questions on the transportation motion of Mr. Hoey.
Mr. Mayor,
Sure, Ms. Clark.
I don't have any questions on the response. I'm very appreciative for the informative response. I'm a bit disappointed to hear that in only 5 short years that the space in the high school is relatively unused. You know, this is an opportunity for students to really explore interests and learn how to use tools and materials to feed their curiosity and grow their engagement in science and technology. But I am encouraged to see that, you know, that the Bartlett School is going to be, and the high school is going to be making the best use of the tools available in the next year, and that there's thought being given how to better create a space in the future high school that that really can be used to give all of our students the advantage of having the opportunity to use a maker's space. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hoey, any comment on your motion response?
Oh, I found out that it's not up to us to pay the bus drivers. The city solicitor and them came back, and that's what I said to them. But after I heard some of the comments made tonight, you might want to see if the city council wants to look into that to make sure we're not making any mistakes. These bus companies, they got a lot of bills to pay, you know, and I know it's tough. You can't pay people. We're told that, but again, I brought it forward. People know about it. Hopefully we do something to help out these bus companies so they don't. That's all. Thank you, Mayor, about that one. Oh, I do have one more thing about motions. I have one on here on page 8 that I just came out with. It was about special education, to go back as far as they can go back to find out, how it's increased and why it's increased. My questions are more about why it's increased so much. But I'd like to put a better delay on that, because obviously with all the other motions that we have recently, and I just did put this one in, maybe it's smart to give you guys more time so you're not, we're not throwing too much at you, because I think my motion might take a lot of work. So if you need to do it by the end of June or July even, that's fine with me, Mayor. That's all I wanted to say. And that was my motion on 4/1/20. I think we should give them as much time as they need. On here, it says April 1st, so obviously the virus goofed this all up. So
yeah,
whatever they can do, come back when you can do it. And it's important to me, but I can wait till July. Thank you, Mayor, for the time.
thank you. Need a motion to accept the reports from the superintendent 7.1 through 7.3.2 as reports of progress. So motion by Mr. Dakota, seconded by Mr. Dillon. New business, vote on interdistrict school choice. Do we need to discuss that, Dr. Superintendent, first?
No discussion should be necessary unless the new committee members want an update. Ms. Phillips is available to update, but essentially here's a procedural vote to continue with the same policy of the prior year. The district previously has opted out of the interdistrict transfer process. It is an opportunity the school committee has, but that opportunity to opt out requires a certain procedural vote. You began that process earlier with your hearing that the mayor led. This now is the next part of that procedure, which is the official vote of the committee. So the recommendation is to opt out of the interdistrict transfer. I would suggest, Mr. Mayor, that Dr. Hall or Ms. Phillips, whoever's prepared to share what that actual motion should look like, or perhaps Ms. Sheehan's already done that homework, make sure legally we adopt it in the proper way.
Okay, so I have motion to not participate in the interdistrict school choice program for the 2020-21 school year.
That's
Question?
correct.
Sound
Seeing
okay?
head nods. Thank you, Ms. Sheehan.
You're welcome.
Okay, Mr. Hoey, before we vote,
Yeah, I just need to ask the superintendent a question, Mayor.
Sure.
This program is for people just for the high school 9 to 12, correct?
Ms. Phillips, I believe that's across the district. Is that correct, Ms. Phillips?
Yes, it is across the district. It impacts us most at 9 through 12, but it is across the district.
Right, so across the district, I don't think we ever had open seats up to the 8th grade, but the high school, we seem to have open seats. So that's my concern right now. Am I voting so they can't even use any open seats that are at the high school?
That's correct. We would not, it's all or nothing. Either we're participating or not in the interdistrict transfer process. The recommendation we're providing is to continue with the past policy, not to change policy, So to continue forward with opting out of the interdistrict policy.
And one last thing, I'm a little confused because I thought we always opened the door for 9 through 12. I have no problem. I knew we didn't have seats from pre-K up to 8th grade, but I always thought, maybe I'm wrong, but Mr. Hall, maybe, do you know, has this changed recently?
Yeah, I believe that Ms. Desmond would probably be best positioned to answer about the history of this. Ms. Desmond?
So last year, Mr. Hoey, there were some changes and Mike Ortiz advised based on the changes that we not have the not approved school choice for last year. So we did not have it for the 1920 school year. And that was based on some legal changes in the language.
Thank you.
okay,
Thank you.
thank you. So I need a motion by Ms. Martin, seconded by Ms. Doherty. Roll call.
Ms. Doherty,
Yes.
Mr. Hoey,
No,
Mayor Leahy,
Yes.
Miss Martin,
Yes.
Ms. Clark,
Yes.
Mr. Dakota,
Yes.
Mr. Dillon.
Yeah.
6 yeas, 1 nay, approved.
Okay, thank you. 8.2, grading and promotion policies during the COVID-19 public health crisis. Mr. Superintendent?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Committee, the recommendation here in moving to remote learning is to follow the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education's guidance to also change our grading policies to be that of credit, no credit. We're using the language of credit, no credit. People may be familiar with the pass-fail connotation, but nonetheless, a bifurcated system where it's credit or no credit, and to suspend all other relevant grading policies during the course of the COVID-related closure. So the recommendation here is to, under your current policies, the school committee does have the authority granted to itself to suspend any policy at any time. We are recommending a suspension of all grading policies and moving towards DESE guidance of a credit, no credit system during the course of the closure only. We will bring back, as part of Ms. Martin's motion previously, how we're going to be able to track this, how we're going to be able to understand this, and we'll also be working with our principals and our school team to make sure that we can provide clear guidance for implementation. We stand for any questions.
Mr. Dakota?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a question as far as the grading policy change, as to how it affects our high school students who are they're competing against each other for that Carney Medal, and how is that going to affect some of those particular kids? Has that been spoken about at all?
Yeah, it absolutely has. This becomes obviously more nuanced and more complex at the high school level than other grade levels. So while it's a K through 12 recommendation in terms of policy, the implementation of it looks different. In short order, trying to follow committee members Doherty's recommendation of me earlier, we are going to be following the grading that was provided up to the closure for all of the weighting. And then we will be determining how to include within the credit, no credit. But other than very small nuances of that, what students could expect is that all of the grades up to the closure all count for all of those requirements. And we'll be using those calculations going forward. Ms. Desmond is prepared to answer any additional questions if you want more specificity. But all of those individual nuances of it, we're going to be working through with the school teams to make sure we can answer any individual question that a student might have, Mr. Dakota. But we are certainly well aware of all of those nuances at the high school.
I'm satisfied with your response. I'm sure there were a lot of students and parents that were out there that were wondering that very same question. So, and I figured if we could give it some clarity, that was a plus. Thank you.
Sure, Mr. Hoey?
yes, thanks again, Mayor. I know I maybe should have asked Latifa, but we're talking about grading and stuff. MCAS, am I correct to say we don't have to worry about MCAS in any way, shape, or form? It's all been.
That's correct.
So no child graduating or any 10th graders or whatever, they're not going to be burnt by MCAS in any way.
I can't say about 10th graders and graduation going forward, but MCAS for this year is not going to be implemented. So for this year, MCAS has not been implemented. In terms of how that affects students going forward, I think those decisions we're going to be waiting out. So we can't commit for a 10th grader in terms of the graduation requirements of MCAS. Like, we can't say that, but the 10th graders this year aren't going to be taking it this year. So we're going to have to wait further guidance from DESE on whether it's going to be the 11th grade or what is going to be looked at. Mr. Hoey, you may recall, we have a lot of students who they don't pass the MCAS the first time. So then they go back through retake, they go through a portfolio. So I want to be really cautious and not give our 10th graders a message that they're not going to have to do anything. They just won't have to take that test this year for sure.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor.
Yep. Any other questions? Okay, so I need a motion by Ms. Martin, seconded by Mr. Hoey to approve Roll call?
Ms. Doherty,
Yes.
Mr. Hoey,
Yes.
Mayor Leahy,
Yes.
Ms. Martin,
Yes.
Ms. Clark,
Yes.
Mr. Dakota,
Yes.
Mr. Dillon.
Yes.
7 yeas approved.
Okay, so 8.3 is going to be taken off the agenda tonight. Is that correct?
Mayor, if I may, I recommend that you just take a motion to cancel April vacation, so amend the action.
So moved.
Okay, we have a registered speaker on this. Is that right, Ms. Sheehan?
Yes. Ms. Bovia?
Yep, so I'll be short and sweet just because I know that it's taken off because I know the calendar is still being decided. So the LSAA just and its members just wanted to say that we've been working hard throughout the closure and we're happy to be continuing next week and working to support student learning and keep the momentum going. We just wanted to clarify the calendar because we know we've been working hard too. And I was on the phone this afternoon with Helene Bentoncourt myself and spoke with her this afternoon to get clarification on the dates because I know the dates didn't seem right to me on the calendar. And I got the clarification from her about us having to, if we had worked the April vacation, only having to work till the 181st day. So I just want to be clear that we get clarification on that before moving forward and making sure that our last day is in fact what the last day should be. That we're all in agreement with that moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. For the committee, Shelby is the new LSAA president. You know, sometimes when we can't see a picture, it's sometimes I want to make sure we give her that introduction. And she is right, Mr. Mayor, and for the public, we're trying to make sure that with this closure and what the committee is trying to make sure is that we are following the law in every instance of every vote. So the reason public for taking the motion in this way is because we are anticipating, as Mr. Dillon alluded to very early in the meeting, we're anticipating clear guidance from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education as to how to handle these dates. So we will make sure that we continue to provide that through. Dr. Hall, thank you for clarifying the motion. Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we need a motion to approve to cancel April vacation.
So moved.
Correct, Dr. Hall?
Second.
Sure. So motion by Ms. Doherty, second by Ms. Clark. Roll call?
Ms. Doherty,
Yes.
Mr. Hoey,
Yes.
Mayor Leahy,
Yes.
Ms. Martin,
Yes.
Ms. Clark,
Yes.
Mr. Dakota,
Yes.
Mr. Dillon.
Yes.
7 yeas approved.
And then last, we have professional personnel, UTL donation of sick days to Julie Bannerman. Need a motion to approve. Is that correct, Ms. Sheehan?
Yes.
Okay, motion to approve by Mr. Hoey, second by Mr. Dakota. Roll call?
Ms. Doherty,
Yes.
Mr. Hoey,
Yes.
Mayor Leahy,
Yes.
Ms. Martin,
Yes.
Ms. Clark,
Yes.
Mr. Dakota,
Yes.
Mr. Dillon.
Yep.
7 yeas approved.
Right. Thank you, everyone. This was a long meeting. A lot of people on board, and we got a lot accomplished tonight. Any announcements before we adjourn, Mr. Hoey, or?
Good.
In a while. All right, I need a motion by Ms. Clark, seconded by Mr. Dakota to adjourn. Thank you.
Mr. Leahy, before you adjourn, we want to remind the community that the school committee's vote in this instance did not cancel Patriots Day. All right, Patriots Day is separate from the spring break. Patriots Day will still be observed by all public schools.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.